Wait a minute. Do you know what happened in 2021 that changed everything in the AI world? Two executives left OpenAI. Nobody thought it mattered. But in 2026, the company they created was worth $965 billion. More than OpenAI, more than Google, more than most Fortune 500 companies. And here's the worst part. OpenAI still doesn't know how this happened. Let me be clear. This is not a story about AI. This is a story about what happens when you have a clear vision, you believe in it, and you're willing to leave a comfortable place to pursue it. Because you believe there's a better way to do things, a way that OpenAI isn't doing, and you're willing to risk everything to prove it. This is the story of Dario Amodei. And this is the story that will change how you think about entrepreneurship, strategy, and power. We're in 2021. Generative AI was still science fiction for most people. OpenAI had just launched GPT-3, a model that could write text, code, even poetry. The company was practically unbeatable. It had money, it had talent, it had first mover advantage, it had everything. But here's the detail nobody talks about. OpenAI had a problem that no amount of money could solve. It had unhappy people. And these weren't just any people. They were the architects of the company, the geniuses who had built everything. Dario Amodei was vice president of research at OpenAI. He wasn't just an executive. He was one of the architects behind GPT-3. He had led the research that created the most important technology of the century. His sister, Daniela Amodei, was vice president of operations. Together, they had built the most important company in the world. They had power. They had influence. They had respect. But in 2021, they did something nobody does when they're at the top. They left, and they took approximately 15 of the company's best researchers with them. According to the New York Times, they left OpenAI because they fundamentally disagreed about how AI should be funded, built, and released. It wasn't a departure for money. It was a departure on principle. It was a departure because they believed OpenAI was wrong. They founded Anthropic with a simple objective: create safer AI, more reliable, more aligned with human values. It seemed noble. It seemed important. But there was an obvious problem that nobody could ignore. OpenAI already had a 5-year head start. OpenAI had billions in investment. OpenAI had the entire market in its hands. OpenAI had Sam Altman, one of the world's most respected entrepreneurs. How could a newly created startup, led by two executives nobody knew outside academic circles, possibly compete? The answer lies in a decision nobody expected, a decision that would change everything. While OpenAI tried to be the best in raw power, Anthropic did something completely different. It decided to be the best in trust. It decided to be the best in safety. It decided to be the best in responsibility. And this strategic decision, this choice not to compete in the same game as OpenAI, would change everything. But how exactly? How did a company nobody knew manage not just to compete, but to surpass the world's most famous company? How did a startup become worth more than OpenAI in just 3 years? How did Dario Amodei manage to do what nobody believed was possible? The answer is in the next 15 minutes. And that answer will change how you think about strategy, entrepreneurship, and power. When Dario and Daniela left OpenAI in 2021, nobody believed they could raise money. After all, they were challenging the world's most powerful company. They were leaving a place where they had everything: salary, status, influence, to start from scratch. But here's what nobody understood. They weren't starting from scratch. They were starting with something much more valuable than money. They were starting with a clear vision and with the reputation of having built GPT-3. In 2022, Anthropic raised $124 million in Series A. Investors like Google, Salesforce, and Zoom bet on them, not because they believed they would win the war against OpenAI, but because they believed they would create something different, something the market needed, something OpenAI wasn't doing. And here's the important detail. These investors weren't amateurs. They were tech giants. They saw something in Anthropic that the rest of the world couldn't yet see. In March 2023, Anthropic launched Claude. It wasn't the most powerful model. It wasn't the fastest, but it was different. Claude was trained with a technique called constitutional AI. Basically, instead of just teaching the model to be useful, they taught it to be safe, to be ethical, to refuse dangerous requests. While ChatGPT tried to answer everything, Claude said no when it needed to, according to Anthropic itself. This approach created a model that was not just safer, but also more trustworthy for businesses. And here's the crucial point. Companies pay more for trust than for raw power. Here's the genius of their strategy. They didn't try to be better than OpenAI in raw power. They tried to be better in trust. While OpenAI faced scandals about dangerous AI, Anthropic was a responsible company. While OpenAI had problems with regulators, Anthropic had their trust. And while OpenAI charged high prices, Anthropic offered cheaper access. It was a perfect strategy for a market that was starting to worry about safety. It was the perfect strategy for companies that wanted to use AI, but were afraid of the consequences. In 2023, Anthropic raised $450 million in Series B. Valuation, $5 billion. 6 months later, it raised $2 billion in Series C. Valuation, $30 billion. In less than 2 years, the company had grown 6 times. But the real growth was just beginning, because in 2024, something changed in the market. Companies started to realize that Claude was really good. That Claude was trustworthy. That Claude could do the job. And when companies started using Claude in their operations, they started paying for it. They started paying a lot. You might think Anthropic's enemy was OpenAI. Wrong. The real enemy was much more powerful. It was the market itself. In 2024 and 2025, something changed in the AI world. The big tech companies woke up. Google launched Gemini. Meta launched Llama. Microsoft invested $10 billion in OpenAI. Suddenly, Anthropic was no longer the promising startup. It was a startup being surrounded. It was a startup that had to compete not just with OpenAI, but with Google, Meta, Microsoft, and every other tech giant that had unlimited resources. But there was another enemy, even more dangerous: regulators. In 2024 and 2025, governments around the world started worrying about AI. The European Union created the AI Act. The US started investigating OpenAI. China banned certain types of AI. Suddenly, the safety that Anthropic had as a competitive advantage became an obligation. All competitors started doing the same thing. The difference disappeared. What was a competitive differentiator became a minimum requirement. And when everyone has the same minimum requirement, you need something more to win. And then began the most expensive race in the history of technology. To train increasingly better AI models, you need computational power. A lot of computational power. OpenAI was spending billions on GPUs. Google was spending billions on TPUs. Meta was spending billions on infrastructure. And Anthropic had to compete with all of them, but it had much less money, much less market power, much less time. Anthropic had to grow fast, very fast, because if it didn't grow fast, it would be crushed by the giants. Here's the problem Anthropic faced in 2025. It had grown too fast. It had raised too much money. It had made too many promises. And now it needed much more money to keep competing. It was no longer a question of being better. It was a question of surviving. It was a question of having enough computational power to train models that could compete with Google and OpenAI. It was a question of having enough revenue to justify the investment. And here's the detail. Anthropic had revenue, a lot of revenue, but it needed more, much more. In February 2026, Anthropic had an existential problem. It had grown too fast. It had raised too much money. It had made too many promises. And now it needed much more money to keep competing. It was no longer a question of being better. It was a question of surviving. And the solution they found was as bold as it was risky. It was a solution nobody expected. It was a solution that would change everything. In February 2026, Anthropic raised $30 billion in Series G. Let me repeat that: $30 billion in a single round. Valuation, $380 billion, led by GIC and Coatue with participation from D.E. Shaw Ventures, Dragoner, Founders Fund, Iconic, and MGX. This wasn't just an investment round. It was a declaration of war. It was Anthropic telling the world, we're going to compete, we're going to win, and we're going to do it now. But that was just the beginning. 3 months later, in May 2026, Anthropic raised $65 billion in Series H. Let me repeat that: $65 billion in just 3 months. Valuation, $965 billion. The company had tripled in value. Tripled in 90 days. This wasn't normal growth. This was exponential growth. This was the market saying, Anthropic is the future. Anthropic is where the money wants to be. Meanwhile, OpenAI had raised $122 billion in March 2026. Valuation, $852 billion. According to Reuters, Anthropic had officially surpassed OpenAI. For the first time since the race began, the startup nobody knew was worth more than the world's most famous company. For the first time, Dario Amodei had beaten Sam Altman. For the first time, the bet to leave OpenAI had proven correct. And it wasn't a small victory. It was a crushing victory. But here's the detail nobody is talking about. This surpassing wasn't by accident. It was by strategy. In May 2026, Anthropic reached $47 billion in annualized revenue. According to Simon Willison, who tracks the company, revenue had grown from $30 billion in April to $47 billion in May. This means Anthropic was making real money. It wasn't speculation. It wasn't a promise. It was real revenue from real customers using Claude in their operations. And that changed everything. Because revenue is power. Revenue is proof. Revenue is the difference between a startup that promises and a company that delivers. While OpenAI faced problems with missed revenue targets, Anthropic was growing exponentially. According to VentureBeat, for the first time since the race began, more American companies were paying for Claude than for ChatGPT. Anthropic had conquered the enterprise market. It had conquered the customers that mattered. It had conquered the money that mattered. And now, with $965 billion in valuation and $47 billion in annualized revenue, the company had a power that nobody expected. But the real test was still to come. In June 2026, Anthropic did something nobody expected. It confidentially filed an IPO request with the SEC. Let me be clear about what this means. A confidential IPO means a company asked the SEC for permission to go public, but kept the details secret. Nobody knew how much it would raise. Nobody knew what the stock price would be. Nobody knew anything, except one thing. It was a war move. According to CNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, Anthropic was preparing to go public. Not in 2027, not in 2028, potentially still in 2026. And it wasn't a normal IPO. It was a confidential IPO. This means Anthropic was moving fast, very fast. Because when you file a confidential IPO, you're telling the market, we don't have time to wait. We don't have time to negotiate. We have to go public now. And when you say that, the market listens. But here's what the market was betting on. That Anthropic would grow so fast that these numbers would make sense. That in 5 years, it would make $100 billion in revenue. That in 10 years, it will be the most valuable company in the world. It's a huge bet, but it's not impossible because AI is truly transformative. And Anthropic is at the forefront of it. According to Anthropic itself, Claude adoption was growing across all industries, in finance, in healthcare, in education, in technology, in everything. Here's what nobody is seeing. Anthropic wasn't going public because it needed money. It was going public because it wanted power. With $965 billion in valuation, Anthropic could hire the world's best talent. It could invest billions in research. It could buy AI startups. It could build its own infrastructure. It could compete directly with Google and Microsoft. Suddenly, Anthropic was no longer a startup. It was a global player. It was a company that had the power to change the world. And that changes everything. But the question nobody is asking is, what if it goes wrong? What if Anthropic can't grow that fast? What if AI isn't as valuable as everyone believes? What if OpenAI, Google, or Microsoft manage to dominate the market? Then Anthropic will disappear. And all the investors who bet $965 billion on it will lose everything. But that's a story for another day. Because now we need to understand what this means for you. Because this story isn't just about Anthropic. It's about how you can win in a market dominated by giants. The story of Anthropic is not a story about AI. It's a story about entrepreneurship. It's a story about what happens when you have a clear vision, you believe in it, and you're willing to leave a comfortable place to pursue it. Dario and Daniela Amodei didn't leave OpenAI because they wanted to get rich. They were already rich. They had everything. They had power. They had influence. They had respect. But they left because they believed there was a better way to do things, a safer way, a more responsible way. And they were willing to risk everything to prove it. But the real lesson isn't about courage. It's about strategy. Anthropic didn't try to be better than OpenAI at everything. It identified a space in the market that nobody was occupying. Safety, trust, responsibility. And it dominated that space. While OpenAI was trying to be the best in raw power, Anthropic was conquering the enterprise market. While OpenAI faced regulatory problems, Anthropic had the trust of regulators. While OpenAI was focused on consumers, Anthropic was focused on businesses. That's the lesson. Don't try to be better at everything. Try to be better at something that matters. Try to be better at something the market wants. Try to be better at something nobody else is doing. Anthropic's decision to go public changed the AI industry forever. First, it proved that AI is the most valuable business in the world. Second, it created a race of valuations. If Anthropic is worth $965 billion, how much is OpenAI worth? How much is Google worth? How much is Microsoft worth? Suddenly, every tech company started reevaluating its AI business, and the numbers exploded. Third, it opened the doors for other AI startups. If Anthropic could do it, why not them? Suddenly, there were dozens of startups trying to do the same thing, trying to find a space in the market, trying to dominate a niche, trying to beat the giants. So, going back to the original question, how did Anthropic reach $965 billion in 3 years? The answer is, it didn't get there alone. It got there because it identified a space in the market that nobody was occupying, because it built a better product in that space, because it conquered the enterprise market while competitors slept, because it grew exponentially when the market woke up, and because it went public at the right time. This is the entrepreneurship story you need to understand. Because it's not a story about AI. It's a story about how you can win in a market dominated by giants. It's a story about how you can leave a place where you're practically a god and create something even bigger. It's a story about how you can change the world. If you like this analysis, leave a like. If you want to understand more about business strategy and entrepreneurship, subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, tell me, what was the most important decision Anthropic made? Do you think it was leaving OpenAI? Do you think it was focusing on safety? Or do you think it was conquering the enterprise market? Let's discuss this in the next episodes. Thank you for watching.